All right, it is showtime. How we doing? I like the enthusiasm. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the Corning Museum of Glass and our very special presentation today called Bring the Heat. This is where we feature one of our in-house artists. Today, it's Michael Beahm. Let's give it up for him. A big round of applause. All right. Michael's going to be assisted today. We got Katie over here. Declan's on the floor. My name is Chris. I'm going to be doing some narration for all of you. I'd like to welcome everybody that's tuning in online as well. This is being live streamed. Alexis is going to get some really great camera shots. I think it's Brad up in the booth that's going to be doing the mixing. We'll have some other social media activity down here as well. But kicking things off, Michael is going to start this process off by making a really simple starter bubble. And this is really where everything begins. So he's got some molten clear glass on the end of that tube. This is called a blowpipe. He's formed a little bubble. Now, everything you see down here on the stage, whether it's a small bowl, whether it's a giant amphora with all the flowers, it all pretty much starts the same way, and that's by creating this starter bubble. We are going to be working with a lovely water blue color, and that's what Katie's whipping up over here. She got a jump start on the prep with this because heating up color, if you're a non-glass maker, is kind of like watching paint dry. There's just some steps that go into it. It's not really that interesting until we get to the application, and we are pretty much there. So she has plucked a chunk of blue glass color out of an oven. She's softened it. She's got just the right shape for what we call an overlay. This is a color drop. So Michael's letting this bubble drop in temperature to harden. Katie's going to soften that little ball of blue glass, and we'll actually drop it right onto the bubble from above. Then we can go through a process of simply peeling the color over that entire bubble, and that's going to give us a bubble of blue glass. Let me start here by asking, by show of hands, has anybody in the crowd seen any glass making before? About half the crowd, a little more than half. Wonderful. Okay, if you have any questions along the way, that's fine. You can get your hand up, shout it out if you're comfortable doing that. To our folks watching online, that's fine too. We do have, I think, Brady here who can field those questions my way, and we'll try to address them. But you're going to see a lot of process go into this super fun piece. This will be a lot of vessel making application. This won't really be a traditional vessel like a bowl or a vase, but it is going to be a blown form. Then we're going to do some sculpture, and you're all really going to enjoy this. I've seen Michael make a few of these recently, and they are so much fun. That's a great camera shot there. So snipping on that little bit of blue. Does it look blue right now? No, it looks orange because it's really, really hot. So let me show you. This isn't the exact color, but this is an example of what we call color bar. So this is a lighter tone of blue, kind of a robin's egg blue. But we buy this stuff pre-made. There are a few companies out in the world that create color stock. We order online. There's close to 200 colors nowadays. We preheat this. If I take this from room temp and I try to put it into a 2,000-degree oven, what happens to it? Pops. It'll shatter. Yeah, thermal shock sets in. So we can heat it up in an oven, and that's what we're doing in that garage over there. That's what we call that unit. We're going to make use of that. We have some parts in there that are going to come later. But once it's at about 1,000 degrees or so, then we can go into our high temp oven and really soften it up. Now I say 1,000 degrees casually because in glass making, that's actually considered cold. Cold for us means rigid. So 1,000 degrees, our glass is rock solid. But we've applied that little bit of blue. Michael is now using this marvering table, rolling that glass back and forth to basically take that little ball of blue and seamlessly peel it right over the entire bubble. That in itself takes a lot of finesse and a lot of practice. I would like to point out that you're watching somebody with about 15 years of experience as a glass maker. Katie has around 14 years herself. When you watch a team that's got that much experience, it looks pretty effortless and it looks pretty easy, but that's deceiving. Hi. You gotta switch mics? Okay. This is Emily. She's with our social media team. So I think I am getting a new microphone. That's okay. Good time to point out, too, if you look to the whiteboard over there, we put up a couple media tags. The first one is Beam Beyond. That's Michael's social. So if you want to check out some of his work, he's on Instagram, I think Facebook as well. But Corning Museum Shops, that's the social I wanted to point out here because this piece, once complete, is actually going to make its way out to our shops and it'll be for sale. So any one of you could end up buying this piece of glass. The price, I think, might yet to be determined, but this piece will make its way out to the shops, and the best way to get updates on that is to tune into that that social on Instagram or Facebook. It's also a great way to tune into any of the activity that our museum goes through or really kind of promotes. Our Instagram channels, the Corning Museum of Glass, Corning Museum Shops, and you can find a lot of our artists, our full-time glassmakers bios on our main website, cmog.org. So be sure and check that out. Thank you, Brad, for getting that close-up shot. Very good. Now, let's talk a little bit about glass. Who can tell me the main ingredient to glass? What is it? Sand. Very good. Silica sand. We have what's called soda lime. That's a quite very common glass in the world. Silica sand with soda ash and limestone. Those are the three main components that go into soda lime glass. This blue most likely comes from, I would think, copper, because copper makes a light teal blue, and that's kind of close to what he has. It could be cobalt, too, though. Cobalt will give us a rich, dark blue. Again, the companies we buy the color from, they handle all of that. That's their batch recipes, they call it. They mix up all those ingredients and melt down the pretty colors. So he's got a really nice, seamlessly melted overlay, just smoothing the surface out. He did a great job of getting all that color evenly dispersed around the bubble. That's really important, especially for an opaque piece, because we can't see through opaque color. There is a bubble inside that, but for the rest of the process, all the inflation and shaping, he'll rely on his experience to know what's happening with that bubble, how thin it's getting or how thick it is in certain areas, and that can be quite challenging when you're working opaque color. Let's direct our attention to the screens. I want to show you a really neat animation. Oh, sorry. I forgot Brad's doing the next thing. Can we roll that gathering animation? Do we have that on cue? Inside of our melting furnace, the one that Katie's standing next to, thank you very much. You can see in the image here, there's a big ceramic crucible. This is a high-fired ceramic, and it can hold about 1,000 pounds of glass if we filled it right to the top. We have a thermostat and a computer control on that oven, and right now it's holding at 2,070 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not just a random number that we said sounded good. That's the exact heat that we like our viscosity of glass to be at. It's kind of like room temperature table honey. We could turn the oven up or down, and that would change the viscosity, but that's a really good temperature range for us to gather out. That's the motion you see him going through. For this particular piece, I think he's going to take 2 gathers. Now, I saw Michael did a couple sort of trial runs of this piece the other day, and he did do 2 gathers on this to get a bit of a larger quantity so we can blow the bubble up a bit larger. The tool he's using here is called a block. These come in a bunch of different sizes. They're fruit woods. Cherry wood for these, but fruit woods burn clean, they burn slow, they burn out really evenly from the tight grain pattern, and we soak them in water. That's why you can shape molten glass with wood. That's really important. We don't let them dry out. The other oven you're going to see him utilize a lot is this one. This is our reheating chamber. Now, during our demonstrations, we get a lot of questions, and the most common one is what? What do you think? How do you get a camera inside that furnace, right? Camera's not actually in the oven. I know it seems like it, but the camera is really close to a very small window that's mounted in the back side of that oven. So you might say, well, that oven is softening your glass. What about the window? That's a specialty type of glass called fused silica. It's a type of glass that was created here in Corning in the 30s, the 1930s, and its first application was for NASA's space program because it can handle really high temperatures and really low temperatures, as well as a lot of temperature change and stay perfectly intact. So it makes it perfect for that little window that the camera can safely look through. This item that Michael's picked up is another very interesting tool. Can anybody shout out what that is made from? Thank you. It's folded up wet newspaper. You guys are good. You guys are good. Who's seen a show with us today so far? Wonderful. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us. During our normal shows throughout the day, because of our very busy program schedule, we're kind of limited to about 20 to 25 minutes for our demonstrations. Another great thing about this Bring the Heat is that it gives us at least an hour to work on something. So Michael's really going to make use of that. He did prep a couple components. So he had a little bit of prep time yesterday, and I mentioned that garage. We have some components that are in there. I don't want to ruin the surprise because this piece is super fun, and towards the end, we're going to see it really come to life. But I can tell he's going for another gather. When you see a glassmaker just kind of hanging out at the bench, letting things drop in temperature and stiffen, they're doing this intentionally. He's not going to soften that again until he gathers more glass. Again, we have to build this in multiple layers, multiple gathers. So letting that glass stiffen up or cool, even using compressed air just to expedite the process a little bit. And using experience, you can kind of judge the temperature. You might see him pause the turn a little bit and see if there's any movement. But really, it comes down to that internal clock that glass blowers get in terms of timing and temperature management. But you can see those blocks do come in a variety of sizes, and they'll last usually a couple years in most cases. Some of the larger blocks that we have that don't get used as often, we'll keep those around for 10, 20 years in some cases. But the smaller ones get used almost every single piece, so they burn out a little faster. But that same gathering motion, and he's able to collect exponentially more glass each time because we're dipping into that oven with a larger surface area. So a nice fresh gather, nicely distributed already. That's a good testament to his skill and his hand control. Beginners don't have that. When they come out of the oven, they're kind of whipping the glass around. It tends to drip on the floor a little bit. Makes a little bit of a mess. We were all there, but with training, you start to really handle the material quite well. Getting this even distribution, this is a lot like potters centering clay on the pottery wheel. If anybody's familiar with that, I haven't tried any of that myself, but I know when you watch a skilled potter, it's so smooth and effortless, but if they make one wrong move, that piece just wobbles out of control. And same happens with our glass. A little bit more about the shop, our equipment, our melting furnace, and our reheating ovens. We have 2 of them going. Our garage over here, a torch. These are all natural gas fueled. There is forced air, a blower on each of our ovens that's pumping air into it. And we have electric ovens as well. The final oven that this piece will go into, a very, very slow cooling process, is an electric oven. We'll circle back to that eventually. But natural gas is our fuel. We even have a torch you'll see him use called a hot torch, which has oxygen assist, and that's a very intense flame. When we get there, we'll see that in action. But using the paper tool as he starts to inflate now, this paper can guide the bubble to blow up in certain areas. If you want to stop the bubble from blowing too thin somewhere, you can hold a tool there as you're inflating. And has anybody noticed the tube that he attached to the blowpipe? So that rubber hose has a cap on the end. We have another one at this bench over here. We attach this to the blowpipe, and what you might be able to see, because it's poking out in front of the sheet metal on the floor, there's a foot pedal. When we press that foot pedal, a little bit of air pressure goes through this system. I do mean little. We have a regulator on this, and right now our system is set to just over 1 pound of pressure. And if you're not familiar with PSI and what that is, if you hold a candle right here, you blow it out, you're probably using about 3 to 5 pounds of pressure. So the skill for glass blowing, one of the biggest skills, lies in your ability to work glass at a high temp. Hotter is the softer it is, the less pressure it takes. But this blow system is something that we started using out of necessity to get us through the pandemic. That's why we have it here. Turns out it works really well. We actually really do like working with it because it kind of streamlines things. It does not make glass blowing easier or harder. It just eliminates the need for one of us to go blow through the pipe while Michael's at the bench turning it and shaping it with his other hand, which is still a common thing to see. You'll see a lot of glass blowers doing that. But again, since we have the system in place, we're really used to it, and we really like working with it. Can you start to see the heat gradation? So wherever that glass is the hottest, that's where it's going to be brighter, glowing more, radiating all that light. He has just worked in a very important constriction. We have to plan ahead to remove the bubble from that blowpipe. To do so, we have to literally break it free. If you've broken glass before, which I'm sure many of us have, you know it's easy to break, but it's not very easy to get it to break in a nice clean line. So we squeeze in a constriction called a jack line for that purpose. We named that after the jacks, the tool he was using. You'll probably see him use those a couple times. This propane torch can be used to do a little spot heating, or in this case, preheating. So when he preheats that one area, then goes into this reheating chamber, that spot is going to soften a little faster than the rest. That tells me he wants that area to move, maybe even blow up a little bit further. I think he's shooting for more of a bulbous section for that shape. But you can see the fast movements back and forth, right? Being very attentive to everything. If you stay in the oven too long, the glass gets too hot, it'll collapse on itself, especially as you blow the form up and stretch it out quite a bit. Got to be really, really careful with that, as he obviously is. But there's a good amount of biofeedback that glass blowers are getting as we're working. As we're turning the blowpipe in the oven, glass is softening, gravity's pull starts to feel greater. We experience that by having to apply more torque to keep it turning on center. And on the flip side of that, when we're at the bench shaping, we can feel the glass stiffening in any hand tool that we're using, or the turning of the pipe becomes easier. So those are things that we're really utilizing as reference. Speaking of the pipes, is anybody curious why we're not wearing gloves? It's another common question. Did the pipes not heat up? They get extremely hot. In fact, we're preheating our pipes over here to just above 1,000 degrees, so the hot glass will stick to the hot metal. But they are stainless steel, and as far as metals, that's not a great conductor of heat. The heat does transfer up, just not all the way. So when he swings it around, can you see that dark and tarnished area? You're trained on day one to not grab that section. Now, we'll wear gloves if we need them. When we're sculpting or we're getting our hands close to glass for a long time, we can put a leather glove on to help us. But to handle the blowpipes, it's pretty comfortable if you have the experience. In fact, Michael had a question earlier. Do you train? Do you learn to blow glass with a glove on? You might think that's a good idea. But if you start to learn to blow glass with a glove, you learn to grab the hot part of the pipe, and you build that muscle memory. You train your body for that. So if you remove that glove, you're going to grab the hot part of the pipe. So it's a really good idea. It's good practice just to learn the right way in the beginning. Now, we can wear sleeves. In fact, Michael has a Kevlar sleeve on his forearm to shield his heat. Beginners sometimes wear long sleeves to help really kind of avoid that heat for longer times. But gloves, not really a great idea to learn the process. A little bit of gravity. He's got that bubble blown up nicely. He's heated certain sections, held it up in the air, getting a nice wide profile to this. Again, using the paper to guide a little more inflation, tapping that foot pedal little by little. Even though that system is set to about 1 pound of pressure, when that glass is that hot, if he just pressed the pedal and didn't stop, you'd see the bubble blow right up. And it would go too thin, and it would just lose its stability. So working with compressed air, you got to be very, very careful. Question, yeah, what's up?
How hot is the glass, and how do you cool it down safely?
How hot is the glass? So in our melting furnace, the temperature is just below 2,100 Fahrenheit. The only other specific temp that I can give you at one point is our annealing oven that this is going to go into. And if you look to your left, you can see our hot sign on that oven, 965. That's actually the temperature for the last glass we were working, the last formula. That oven is holding at 935 Fahrenheit. Now, at any given point with a piece, we can't say exactly for sure what temperature it's at. We kind of estimate as we're working. Once this glass becomes totally rigid, it has no more movement, we say 1,000 degrees. It might be 1,100 to 1,200 around there, but we just average 1,000 degrees. If we let it go below that 1,000 degree mark as we're working it, that's where it wants to crack. So if you watch closely, and now we're at this phase where this is important, Michael's going to maintain temperatures by using a torch or going for quick reheats. That's a really good question. We're estimating, we're guessing all the time, but with experience, Michael guesses really well. So Katie has put together a little wad of this blue glass. Actually, this is perfect. We have the same color in crushed colored glass called frit. So this is the color that he's working with, and Katie's just made what's going to be the foot for that. Everybody see that? So it's this beautiful water blue. I think copper is used to make this blue, and fluorine to make it opaque, most likely. But we're not going to see this in the piece he's working. Some colors, when they lose that glow, do reveal their true color, even as they're working them. The opaques tend to not do that, especially the opal blues, the opal greens, the reds and yellows. They always look different shades or different tones. All right, so he's got the form ready. We're going to drop, I think we're going to, or you're going to apply this from the side. He's going to drop this on. So this will be a fun demonstration in how fluid the glass can be. Katie's got a nicely shaped up little ball of that blue glass. She keeps it turning. It's a tall one. Goes all the way up. Nails center. That in itself is not easy to do. And he'll snip it free. You got the right idea. Let's give it up for him. I can tell you from experience, that's hard to get that application there. But when you look at any of these forms, again, this is making use of traditional vessel-making techniques, but it's going to be a sculptural form. But using any of these items as examples here, envision that the openings were attached to a blowpipe. at one point. So when we made this elongated bubble, we could tip it up in the air, drop some glass on from above, make the foot. Now, once the foot is done, we're going to flip this piece around. And to do this, we'll soon attach a handle called a punty. And what they're doing here is putting a little patch of clear glass. They're fusing that to the center of the foot. This isn't decorational, but it's functional for support and stability. The punty that we're going to soon see Katie create is a little bit of glass shaped up on a solid rod that we're going to use to stick to the foot. When we work with some colors are what we call soft colors, meaning they heat up, they soften very fast with heat. Blues are notoriously soft. So when you attach a punty to a soft color with a form that's pretty tall like this, that connection can kind of peel away. It sounds really weird to say that, but it can actually happen. It can literally peel away from the color, and you don't have much stability there. So when you fuse a little blob of this clear glass onto that foot and you let that patch they put on kind of stiffen, then you attach the punty to the patch and everything is nice and stable. So it's just something that a lot of glass blowers will choose to do when working with these opaque colors. Certain transparent colors are very soft too, and they can literally peel away. So that's a good safety net to do that. But here's the punty. Punty is just a bit of glass. Usually it doesn't take very much. It depends on how heavy the piece is, but this is a perfect amount that Katie has for the scale that Michael's working. Now it's really important that we get the punty to the right shape and the right temperature. We want this to stick and support the piece, but we want to make sure it doesn't fuse permanently, unlike that patch they just put on. So she takes a moment, rolls it back and forth on a big metal table called a marver. This does two things. It gives it the right shape for contact, which kind of the run-of-the-mill punty, the basic is this dome shape she's formed. It also pulls heat from the glass. Metal is an excellent heat sink, so it drops the temperature a bit. She's kind of hanging out, letting it stiffen up a little bit more. She might even give it a little extra heat when they're ready. We'll see. So it's a good way to kind of let the core of that punty stiffen, and then she gives the front of it just a bit of heat, so it's a nice contact temperature, but it's stable. This is a really nice punny. She'll bring it close. She'll let Michael grab a hold and do the rest. So this is a shot for bullseye. Pretty good shot. Now, if he needs to make any minor adjustments, he'll move it around a bit, but he's got it locked in right where he needs it. A little compressed air to stiffen it up. And now a little insurance heating. We are going to turn to thermal shock. This is one of the moments that we can use it. Before we shock that constriction, he's just making sure the temperatures are warm enough that the shock doesn't travel down the whole thing. Again, this is estimating the temperatures. Ask Katie how she feels. If the connection is ready to go, she'll give him a confirmation. A little bit of water. Tiny cracks form immediately from the water drops, and then a sharp tap. Let's give it up for him. Nice job. That was a perfect move. Very good. So if you look in the screens here, you can see now we have an opening. You can also see the watermarks, right? So you put a drop of water on there, and you can see the sort of white marks that are on there. Those are tiny little checks that form. But the temperature was good enough that those checks, those cracks stayed in that one spot. What happens when you first start learning the process is you don't have that timing down. You don't have good temperature management. You let the glass cool just a bit too much. You put a drop of water on it, the whole thing cracks and falls apart. You can't really do much at that point, but just start over. So you learn from your mistakes and experience, and again, kind of internal clock gets developed. But this is a bit of a longer reheat. Are there any questions in the crowd that I can answer for anybody as we're working through? Yes? This particular piece? Michael, how long did it take you to figure this one out? I know I saw you make some of these a couple years ago.
Yeah, I made the first one. I looked it up in September of 2023.
September of 2023 was when he made the first one.
And the first one is actually still one of my favorites.
And it's still one of his favorites, he said. I really like that. That's pretty cool. So he's been, let's answer it this way, he's been refining that since 2023. And I think each time he's been going through, probably getting more efficient with the steps and the stages of doing it. And when you're sculpting, especially when you start to kind of put things together, you know, you develop and you refine the timing with your team, and you start to get a little bit more efficient with it. You say, oh, I can kind of knock this step out of there and do this in 2 stops instead of, you know, doing it in 3 stops. So I think that he's probably experienced that in the past couple of years. It's an excellent question.
I would say
the success of the first one was partially a fluke, he says. So I really like that too. A lot of times when you're experimenting with a form you haven't done before, you simply have to just get in the shop and do it. You can sketch something out, you can think of the steps in your head, but glassmaking is one of those things that you really learn through application. You really get into the studio and just get the glass on the pipe and kind of go through the process and see what happens, learn from that and say, well, I need to tweak this and do this instead to get to that result that I'm after. So saying that that first one was a fluke, that's such an honest answer. Got a question? The approximate weight of that piece of glass, I would guess, is probably 8, 9 pounds. Yeah, he's really hamming it up here. Might be close to 10 pounds, just under that. The punty that he's working on, though, probably weighs about 10 pounds. But you also have to take into account that it's the leverage or the anti-leverage. So when he's picking that up, he can't get his hand right close to the end because we talked about how hot it is right there. He's kind of holding about 2/3 or halfway back. So we're dealing with that leverage issue there. But also, the biggest thing that we're experiencing in terms of the amount of glass we're working is in that early stage when everything is molten. Because the amount of torque it takes to turn those blowpipes, that's really where we're feeling it the most. It's not so much in this piece, the lifting of it, but in the early stages where you're turning and everything's got that motion to it, that's where we're really experiencing it. Good questions. We'll get back into the Q&A in a moment. Katie has been forming up another bit of this blue glass for what's called a lip wrap. So I don't know that we have a piece down here with a lip wrap on there. I don't think we do. We're going to see it anyway, this application. But this is a nice little detail to, in this case, we're not adding a different color. We could. We have a couple hundred colors of frit. And he could add a white or a pink or a green lip wrap on this. But we're adding the same color intentionally to create a thick edge on this. Now, that second cut he made is a really interesting crescent-shaped cut. That's a pretty common approach when we're making pictures. So you could turn this into a really lovely picture, but again, this is a sculptural form. But this is one of those magic moments of glass. Such a stretchable material. What do you guys think of that? Well done. So much finesse. And Katie and Michael have worked together for many years now. I think that's apparent, right? When you watch glassmakers, it seems intuitive. It's often referred to as a dance. There's a lot of really refined movement that goes on, and it is. Now, you could take glassmakers that have never worked together before if they have enough experience, and there's a kind of a common language in a studio in terms of the process. People kind of know the assignment that's going on, but certainly when you've worked together, you have that rapport and that really kind of intuitive understanding of what's happening. All right, just making sure that that lip wrap is really seated to that edge very, very nicely. We're often asked during our demos, what's the difference between commercially produced glass, like machine-made glass, and what you folks do here, this handmade process? Sometimes it's hard to tell. There's a lot of machine-made glass in the world. One thing I always like to highlight, because we just saw it, is where we flip the bubble around. When we transfer it to a punty, machines don't do that. Not to say that somebody couldn't invent a machine to do it. I'm sure they could. But it would take more time. It would take more energy and ultimately more cost to do that. So most machine-made glass for commercial products like bottles, jars, windows, stuff like that, light bulbs, is made very, very quickly, very cost-effective in that nature, usually pressed into a mold or inflated into a mold. But this transfer that they went through, that's handmade stuff. Ready for that? Okay. All right, so we're getting ready to do the sculptural stuff. I'm going to jump in here and start to take some flash heats for Michael. Katie's going to start pulling a couple elements out of our garage. And if you've joined us after I talked about that garage, it's the oven that's on your far right of our stage. You can see the flickering coming out of the left side. And just like you can park a car into a garage at home or on property, we can park pieces of glass into our garage. So that tool is used to essentially babysit pieces. And Michael made a couple components that we're now going to add one by one. And it's holding around 1,000 degrees. That safe temperature where nothing is overheated, so it won't soften and distort. Okay. But we can pull them out of that garage when we're ready for them. And it looks like that's what Katie is doing now. So she's using a little punty. She's got one of our half-inch rods. She put a little gather of glass on there, and she's attached it to the first element. And she's going to get right into the reheating chamber. So when you move from the garage, you want to quickly go into a high-temp oven. Because if you hang out too long, and you let that glass get a little too cold at room temp, it can crack. So time-sensitive approach with that. But Michael's kind of just in a holding pattern at the moment. You can see he's pausing, he's letting everything sort of actually move a little bit. He's intentionally letting the neck kind of bow to one side. He's giving this piece a little bit of movement. No, that's great. I think we're all going to see why in a moment. Again, I didn't want to ruin the surprise, but these next two elements we're going to put on there are really going to liven this piece up. This is where our hot torch becomes really valuable. An oxygen gas torch. We can use that to spot heat very small areas. So my job now is just to give some flash heats, make sure that every other part of this piece doesn't cool too much. So he grabs a hold of this little marble right there and plants it right onto that hot spot. All right. What does that look like? An eyeball. Yeah, so we've got another one of those we're going to put on here. This is my favorite part. It's where this piece really does just kind of come to action. So when I'm taking these flash heats, I'm going to be pretty attentive to that hot section. I need to make sure the foot and the punty and all that don't cool too much. But that section that he just applied the eyeball is moving a little bit, so I'll do my best to keep it in the same spot that he positioned it. He'll make a couple little tweaks with those tongs, but he's heating up the opposite side. Katie, meanwhile, is punting up the next eyeball. The punty that we're working on, that Michael and I are working on, sometimes he might blast it with a little bit of heat from that torch. The metal that the rods are on, or they're made from, pull heat from the punty as well. So when we're working on a piece for longer duration, this just extra little touchy heat just helps keep some life into it. The weight of the piece is really secured to that, and you don't want that connection to get too cold. So just some quick flash heats. I'm also very careful when I move around to set that punty down very gently. We utilize vibration when we're all done to help break the piece free, but we certainly don't want that to happen right now. So I set it down very gently. One quick flash, okay, you got it. Now, Michael, I mentioned the term gaffer. He is gaffing this team, and you could have a team of 10 people working together. The gaffer's job is to orchestrate everything. So you might hear him giving a couple little commands or shout-outs here and there, saying, okay, go for a quick flash, or Katie, I'm ready. You want it there or flipped over? Flip over. Hot glass is so sticky to hot glass, so upon contact, that eye sticks right away. All right, what do y'all think so far? Really cool. That just adds so much character right off the bat. But we're not done. We're not done there. We have a couple more components. Yep, I can hear the yips. So Michael said he drew some inspiration from Sesame Street and really wanted to make something fun and playful, and I think he nailed it. Okay, so Katie's going to make use. Oh, sorry, I moved that frit pan. I showed everybody. She needs to use that frit one more time. I wanted to show everybody the color. My bad. But she's rolling a little gather through. And we're now going to add a couple more components to this. And then there's two final things that are in the garage that we'll add at the very end. But this next edition, these next two editions, will be hot worked on here. Basically like two little handles. Katie rolls through that frit a couple times too. This just creates a dense blue color. If you only rolled through once, it would be a nice blue, but it would be a little bit washed out. We want it to match nicely with the piece. She did the same for the foot and the lip wrap. Couple rolls. Another good use of the fluffy torch here, just maintaining heat wherever you need it. This really allows the connection points where the eyes are to kind of stiffen up so they're not moving around quite so much. Michael said he'll take a quick flash. Were there any more questions while I'm free for just a moment in the crowd? Anything online? Okay, if we can think of anything, let me know. But again, I want to highlight that this piece, when complete, will go out to our shops. And if you want to tune into any updates with that, the hashtag right here for Instagram and Facebook is the Corning Museum Shops, and also Michael Beam's Beam Beyond Instagram tag. Check out some of his work. But we've done a series of Bring the Heat demonstrations so far this summer. All the pieces have been made available for sale. And the sale goes to benefit our programming here at the museum, which is really, really lovely. Even subtle communication, I just caught that. I looked across the shop, I saw Katie looking over this way, gave a little nod of the head while Michael was tuning in. So these cues are really important when working together. Syncing up the timing, making sure that he has the appropriate heat when she's ready to bring that bit over. She's tapered this one, so a bit different than the foot drop, a little bit different than the lip wrap. This is more of a handle style bit, this tapered cylinder. And this time Michael is using a very interesting shear, these diamond shears. They're blades that squeeze together in a diamond shape. So they're perfect for this type of move. You can see how that bit's moving around. A lot of glass blowers tell you that sculpting handles like this isn't a functional handle, but it's kind of like sculpting a wet noodle. And that's a really good analogy. You can see how much movement it has, a little air just to stiffen it. But using gravity, that dance back and forth, making sure it doesn't flop down onto the side of the piece or get too far out of control. But a really nice little curve to it. So I think a lot of you can guess this is going to become one of the antennas. I'll go in for a quick reheat. This is where I'm going to pay very close attention to that. Yeah, sure, I'll take that right door, Declan. Thank you. No, that's great. That's fine. So a little bit of movement in the antenna is okay. I'll try to keep it in the same general position that Michael had it, and he can make a couple final tweaks. There you go. But meanwhile, Katie's starting up the second one. And then the last couple components for the antenna bits are in the garage. So I think Katie will punty them out the same way she did for the eyeballs. He has a little extra glass that's on the end there. He'll probably just kind of crimp and maybe snip that free, or you're going to keep that. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So you can keep that little crimp on there as a tool to grab a hold of and move the antenna or bend it. And he said when he's ready, he'll get rid of that. Thank you. Sometimes you might notice he's using a dry wooden paddle. Even though that bit is plenty hot by all intensive purposes, if you were to use a metal tool that wasn't preheated and touch that little antenna, you could crack it very easily. So there's times you can use metal that's not been preheated, but it really depends on how hot the surface of the glass is. So a dry wooden paddle is really nice to utilize for those types of moves that he's going through. Quick flash. Okay. This time, Katie? Okay. Thank you. So Katie's done a great job of prepping that second bit just the same way. That's really important, consistency. If you're adding components and you want them to match up in terms of their dimension and the profile and how they get stretched and shaped, then you really want to be as consistent as you can. And great bit. Very cool. So using gravity, that little move where he kind of holds it upward like that, but he lets gravity kind of dip the rest of it. There's a lot of finesse to that. Because you can pinch and push and pull the glass, but to get a really nice clean line like that with no tool marks, using those really fine moves. And that's something that really just comes with experience and being comfortable working glass hot like that. I didn't mention it, but Michael actually started working with glass at Hastings College, Nebraska. A lot of glass blowers get their start at university. It's a common approach. All right, I'll take that door, please. Thank you. It's not the only way to get into it, but it is a pretty common one nowadays. You're welcome. Katie went to Emporia State University, started working glass there. Last I checked, and this was a while ago, in the United States, there's about 50 different colleges with a glass program. Sometimes people go to school for other majors or art majors in general and don't know anything about glass and discover it there at school and just become kind of enamored with it and really get into it. Traditionally, throughout history, glassmaking was learned through apprenticeships. And we like to tell people, I use the Steuben factory when they had a full-time apprenticeship program. That factory no longer exists. Steuben is still a brand, but the factory actually was right here in this space that we're all in. And that factory closed many years ago. Gotcha. But when they had their apprenticeship program, it was 6 years. And after 6 full-time years of apprenticing, you were considered a pretty decent beginner glassmaker. And I think it's a really good way to put it. It's a demanding material and takes a long time to learn just the basic proficiencies. And then it can be a lifetime of trying to master it. Okay. Okay, so he's got the antennas placed where he likes them. I like that he has them in very different positions, too. They both have a lot of life and cool curve to them, but a little bit different. Adds to the lifelike qualities. Okay, thank you. This is pretty common, too, this move where Michael can step outside the bench, especially for a larger scale piece. It gives him a lot better position to heat and work, and I can just manage the punty and keep things moving just right. Take those flash heats. So the point of contact for the antenna balls that he has, I think they're yellow, right? He's now going to heat up just that tip of the antenna. That's where we're going to place those. But yeah, Katie's doing the same thing. She is punting those out of the garage. And that punty is pretty important. I mean, all punties are important, but the type of punty that she's making to stick to the ball temporarily needs to break free right when we're ready for it. A little flash. And remember, when this piece is complete, it's going to go straight away into an oven called an annealer. It's going to slowly cool down to room temperature. Very important step. A piece like this, I'm guessing probably 12 hours, maybe a little bit more. All right, plants it right on there. And I'll flip back and forth. And remember, I said the opal colors don't really look accurate. This is a bright yellow. I think it's canary yellow. But the yellows look orange, the oranges look red, the reds look brown when they're hot. You can leave the door, please. Thank you. That's moving a little bit. I'm going to flip. And flip. Flip. Making sure that that seal is really heated in nicely with that torch. The strength of a glass-to-glass connection when we're using heat like this is really based on how hot they are when you join. So driving that heat in there nicely. Yeah, let's do a little torch work on the punning. That would be great, because the antennas are still moving a bit. Thank you. Of course. The type of glass that we're working with here, some people inquire about that. I mentioned it's a soda lime formula, but it's a company called Glasma that makes our batch. We just started working with it a little less than a year ago now. We actually love it. It's a Swedish company, and there's, I believe, a touch of barium that's in there. And it makes it a really nice quality to work. The colors that we're working with today, I think, are Reichenbach mostly, that German company. But Glasma, we buy the batch. That's what we shovel into our main furnace. That's our clear glass, and it's really, really nice. Flip. The Steuben factory I was just talking about, when the factory was operating here, it was a lead crystal factory. Lead oxide was a very big component to that, which does a couple of things, but primarily increases the light refraction in the glass, so it just makes it look really, really pretty, especially for very thick pieces. It's important for them. All right, so he's applied a decent amount of heat to that tip of that antenna. He'll most likely clip that excess free right now using those diamond shears. And then we'll go through the same approach. Thank you. A little more torch on the punty. There's not really a limit to how long we can work on something either. That's another common inquiry. Is there a limit to how many times you can reheat something? Well, if you know how to keep the temperatures right, not really. We've seen people work on pieces all day long. But we were talking about the refinement process with a piece like this and going through all the steps multiple times. Michael's doing this pretty efficiently. All right. Excellent. Love it. Now, when he was making these components, Michael was also using calipers, measuring tools. So when he made the marbles, or the marble shapes, I should say, for the eyeballs and the antennas, he matched the size, which is really good because you can make them, and if they're not the same size, it'll still look really neat, but I think it just adds that extra little detail of attention, which gives it that lifelike quality. Katie, would you mind fluffy torching the bottom for me? Thank you. There you go. All right. That's a little extra stress off my shoulders now. What do you think, though? I think we should give the team a big round of applause. Michael is doing so well. This is such a fun piece. I love watching these come together. Oh, that's right. We've got one more element. Now, I talked a little bit about Bring the Heat series. Has anybody here seen any of the other Bring the Heat demonstrations? So there's been 3 of them so far. There's been a common theme amongst them, and that's to incorporate flowers, botanical stuff. So Michael says we have to put a flower on this one. So we're kind of keeping with the theme. So he did make a flower earlier today. I think that's resting in the garage. Katie now has it on a shovel, so she's been using punties to pull these out. Would you like another flash? Yep, I got you. But another good way to bring items out of the garage is on one of those shovels, which has been preheated. It's just a little metal spatula. So she's plucked that out of there. A little torch work. I think we're okay, yeah. Yep. It's got a little movement to it. It's actually a safety net to have movement through the bottom of the piece. That lets us know the connection is nice and stable for now. Okay. Michael says a quick flash. Okay, here's a purple flower. I love it. Oh, she has it on the forks. I thought she had it on the shovel. Looks like I might have got a little hot. A little tap will break that right off. We'll kind of loosen it up. I'm going to go for one more quick one. He was just kidding. No flower. Let's give it up for Michael Beahm, everybody. Little theatrics for the end there. He kids. Okay. This piece is near complete. It's got a little bit of movement into it, which is good, but now we don't want it to move anymore. So we do what's called flashing it down, which means we take a couple quick reheats, might use the torch a little bit. He'll kind of make a couple final tweaks if anything has some adjustments to be made. But Katie's going to take over. Thank you. That'll free me up. Declan has already geared up, got the spacesuit, as we call it, on, which is an aluminized jacket for reflects the heat, a face shield, and most importantly, those Kevlar mittens. They're really well insulated. You can grab a hold of a 1,000-degree-ish piece of glass and hold it for at least a minute before you'd feel any discomfort. So the annealer is over here, and we've been loading it all throughout the day. There's plenty of space on the left side. Again, a piece like this, it's not too thick. 12 hours would probably be fine, but I'm guessing we'll do at least a 16-hour annealing program just to be on the safe side. The connections with those eyes and whatnot. A couple drops of water just on the punty. Tiny cracks form right there. Declan's underneath just in case it drops early. But a quick little tap should do it. Look how easily that came off. Perfect dismount. And a fire polish to the sharp edge that's left behind. Just a quick touch. And we do want to quickly get it in the oven so we don't waste any time. Let's give it up for the team. That's Michael Beahm, Katie and Declan, everybody else that's down here making this a fantastic show and program for all of you. And I want to thank everybody in our online audience that's tuned in. Again, I want to highlight that this piece will make its way out to the shops for sale. So inquire about that. Tune in with the social medias we have over here. Stick around and come on down if you want to chat or talk with any of us. But thank you so much, everybody. Fantastic show. You guys have been a great crowd. Have a good night.